Thank you. Can everybody hear well enough at the back? Everybody can hear well enough. I will speak as loud as I can. If you can't hear me, put your hand up.
Oh, go ahead.
Try and do a little better. But, there we go. I knew when I was at the back there I couldn't hear that well. Of course, I'm getting to be a little older. I wanted to thank all the guys that I played hockey with this afternoon for making me remember how old I was. I can't play that game any longer. And I even got whacked in the shins there once. It felt pretty good. I remember those days, and I tripped somebody out there, and that felt pretty good too. Yeah, I had fun. It was a good time, and I hope you did too. I brought with me a few very old cards here that pictures of me when I played. One's in a Toronto uniform, and one's in a Penguin uniform. And so after I will sign some of these if you guys want them. So I'll just leave that for after. We'll do that for after. But I wanted to tell you about my story today. And I wanted to thank you, first of all, too, for having me here at this camp. I've been here once before, which was last summer. And I came here to pick up my grandson, who was at camp here. And he, Hockey Ministries, runs a camp out of here in the summer. And those of you that are involved, like Rick here, I wanted to thank you for that because it was a big impact on my grandson. He loved it here. When I picked him up, he showed me the cabin he was in over here, and they just had a wonderful week. So thank you for that. When I was a little kid, about the age of my grandson now, all I wanted to do is play hockey. And my grandson's much that way too. He just wants to play hockey. School is another thing, but that's the way I started out. I started out like many young guys, just wanted to play hockey. I wanted to make it to the NHL, and I had that dream since I was a little kid. And I was born in Toronto, grew up in the Newmarket area, and met my wife-to-be when I was 13 years old. And we went steady from that time until we got married at the age of 19. I'm not saying that that's the way it should be done, but that's my story. That's the way it happened. So my wife and I, she shared my dream of playing in the National Hockey League. And I remember going home and meeting her father. And you get that. You meet the family, and the father eventually is going to say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so I told him, I said, oh, well, I'm going to be a National Hockey League player. And he didn't roll his eyes really, but I'm sure he must have thought that he had a real dreamer here. So anyway, my wife, or she wasn't my wife then, but she shared that same dream that I had, that I would one day play in the NHL. And I knew that there was some steps I had to make to get there. And the first thing, when I was 15, I had to move away from home to play in a bigger center in Toronto. So I moved away from home at the age of 15 and had played 2 years in Junior B in Toronto with a team called the Dixie Beehives at that time. Remember those Dixie Beehives, but we had some good teams then. And so that was my first step I had to make. And then I went on to play Junior A in St. Catharines for the St. Catharines Blackhawks, they were called at that time. And I was owned by the Chicago Blackhawks from the time I was 15 years old. So I never went into the NHL draft or anything. So they had my rights. So after I finished my junior time in St. Catharines, we had a good team then too. We went to the finals against the Montreal Junior Canadiens. Marcel Dion was on my team in St. Catharines. So he was the big name then. And we had guys like Al McDonough, who turned out to be a 50-goal scorer in the NHL, and Dick Redmond was there too. And we had probably 7 or 8 guys that ended up in the NHL from that team, so we had a good team. But from there, because I was owned by Chicago Blackhawks, I didn't get to try out with them. At the end of junior, you have to either turn pro or you're pretty much done. So I went down to their farm team in Dallas, and it's called the Dallas Blackhawks. And I never got the chance to go to Chicago for their training camp or anything. They just sent me to Dallas. And so my wife and I were married at that time. We got married at the age of 19. I was the only married guy on a junior team. Imagine that. Not too much. But we packed up everything we owned and off we went to Dallas, and had 2 good years in Dallas again. Hockey was going really good. My first son was born in Dallas, and he's been a blessing to us. And then I got my big break. Then Chicago did not protect me, and I went in what they call the interleague draft. And because Chicago didn't protect me, then any team in the NHL could pick me up, and that's when Pittsburgh chose me in the interleague draft. And I went to Pittsburgh, and I was thrilled that at the age of 21 that I had my dream had come true. And I made the team. Red Kelly was the coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins at that time, and he, I remember going there, and I guess he liked the way I play. I made the team. I remember the first game, I was just shaking. My knees were knocking when the game started. The puck drops, and you just get your first hit in, and you start into the play, and then you settle down a bit. But it was a tremendous, tremendous feeling at that age to have your dreams come true. Now, at that time, I'll tell you what, a lot of people ask me, what kind of money did you make back then? And those were back in the years when you had to prove yourself before you got any money. And so my first year in the NHL was 1971. I made $13,500 that year, which is something like meal money for the guys these days. But that's the way it was. I mean, I was thrilled to get that much money. Minimum wage at that time in the NHL was $12,000. I thought, wow, $13,500, yeah. What am I going to do with all this money? But to put it in perspective, my dad at that time was only making about $8,000 a year. So it was still good money. Seemed like a lot of money to me at the time. But after that, I had a really good year. My first year, I was picked to be Rookie of the Year for the Penguins that year. And Red Kelly gave me all the ice time a rookie could ever ask for. And one of the other great things in Pittsburgh was I played with a guy that I used to watch as a kid and really admired him, and his name was Tim Horton. And so we played defense together for a year that he was there, over a year, but we played together for a year. So it was a wonderful thrill for me. And hockey at that time was going really good. I started, I signed a 1-year contract that first year when I made $13,500, and then the next year, I'm all of a sudden we're making $30,000 the next year. Jumps to 50, and like things are really going good. Everything on the ice seemed to be going really good. But what I got involved in the National Hockey League at that time, I started to be a party guy. I started to drink too much after the games. I ended up committing adultery on my wife. And hockey gave you an outlet to do that because you're on the road so much. And that was part of my lifestyle. I regret that tremendously. But that's the way it was. That's my story. And at that time, although everything was good on the ice, year after year, things got worse at home. And when you start committing adultery on your wife, whether your wife knows about it or not, you're ruining your marriage. And that's what was happening to me. So in Pittsburgh, like I say, hockey kept getting better. I started to make all-star teams. I ended up playing in 3 all-star games. I was picked to be on Team Canada 76, which was a wonderful honor. And so at the end of 1978, I was traded from the Pittsburgh Penguins to the Toronto Maple Leafs for Randy Carlyle and George Ferguson. So Toronto wouldn't have been my first place to go and play. I had heard a lot of stories about Harold Ballard and all the stuff that goes on in Toronto, and I didn't really want to go, but I had no choice. So off I went to Toronto, and the one thing was that I knew a couple of the guys in Toronto from Team Canada 76. Daryl Sittler was one of them, and Lanny McDonald was another. Daryl was a great captain, a great guy. We had a good team at that time. Besides Lanny and Daryl, there was Boris Salmi, another great player. Tiger Williams was a real character on the team then. He was our policeman. Guys like Dave Hutchison, Mike Palmetier was in goal. So we had a good team. And so I went there, and when I got there, I met one other guy on the team. His name was Ron Ellis. Ron Ellis had played for a long time with the Leafs, the only team Ron ever played for. And Ron had just become a Christian the year before I got there. And through Ron, one of his friends gave every new Toronto Maple Leaf a Bible. And I remember early in the season, we just started the season, and I come off the practice at the Gardens one day, and these Bibles were in our stalls. Now this is my Bible. It's a leather-bound Bible. You can barely see it now, but it's got a leaf crest on the front of it. And my name was on the bottom. And after we got off the ice, I picked up the book and I thumbed through it. I'd never read the Bible, never gone to church before or anything. But I knew it was a Bible. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, we've only lost a few games and they're pulling on all the stops. So I kept this book as a keepsake, as a souvenir, really, because it was a nice book, but I just put it on the shelf and I didn't really read it. And I remember also one of the guys told me that Ron Ellis, he said he's a Christian, and sooner or later he's going to tell you about Jesus. And so I watched Ron, and the more I watched him, the more I liked his lifestyle. He didn't really live like a lot of the rest of us lived. He was a great team guy, played tough on the ice. He got his 20 goals a year, I think, all the years he played. Just a great player. And he was a good family man, a great guy off the ice. He wanted to be one of the team all the time. We would go to bars after the games, and Ron would come and he'd drink his Coke, and he'd probably be the first guy to leave, and we would stay there and drink too much. But he never condemned us. He never judged us. He just wanted to be one of the team. And he let his little light shine to me in a very big way. He didn't have to preach to me, but he just showed me a difference in his lifestyle that appealed to me. Because at that time my marriage wasn't good. I was burdened with the things that I had done, with the sins that I had committed. And I was looking for someone like Ron for answers, because I knew he kind of had his life together and I felt like mine was falling apart. And so Ron and I played together for 2 years in Toronto, just over 2 years actually. And then I was traded back to the Penguins again. And I went back to the Penguins. I finished the year out there, and I knew that I was getting to that age where I was getting slower, and I just thought it was time to quit. And my idea at that time would be that I would go home, we'd build a nice home, my wife and I, and things would be better because I wouldn't be taking road trips. And so we did that. I retired at the end of the year. We built our dream home. We said we'd never move from that place again. And that's what we did. We bought acreage, we had some cattle, we just were together all the time. Things were somewhat better. Fortunately for me, Ron Ellis retired that same year, and we only lived about 15 minutes apart. And so Ron and I then started seeing each other more often. I got a chance to talk to him about things that were going on in my life. He started to tell me about the changes that had happened in his life, and that very much appealed to me. Ron also was involved in a Christian sports camp, and this Christian sports camp, it's called Teen Ranch. They had a hockey team made up of Christian guys. And they said, Ron asked me, he said, Dave, would you come up to Timmins? We're going to go up there and play in a hockey tournament. Would you come and play with our team? And so I said, sure. I knew Ron at that time, and I liked Ron. And I had met the guy that had given us these Bibles, who happened to be the director of Teen Ranch. And so I said, sure, I would go. So off we went to Timmins. But when I got to Timmins, I not only played in the hockey tournament, but I got to go to a dinner like this. I got to go to a businessman's breakfast. I heard other guys on the hockey team tell their stories about how they came to faith in Jesus Christ. And some of the guys that came were ex-NHL guys like Jean Promer were there, Gary Unger was there, and I heard them tell their stories. And so after that night, I went back. We were building out places, and I went back to where I was staying. And one of the guys there said to me, he said, Dave, is there any reason why you couldn't give your life to Christ tonight? And I said, wow, I really don't think I could, because I don't think that I can live my life as good as you guys do. I said, I don't think I'm worthy to be a Christian. And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, Dave, you're exactly right. You'll never, ever be good enough. You'll never be worthy to be a Christian. That's why Jesus Christ died for your sins. And all you have to do is receive Him as your Lord and Savior, because He paid the price for all the things that I had done. And I left Timmins the next day, and I was like a guy sitting on a fence. I felt that it was probably the right thing to do. I didn't know anything about the Bible, and I wouldn't commit that night. So we flew back from Timmins the next day, but by the time I got home, I was so convicted. I knew I had to do something about this person of Jesus Christ. I knew that I was either going to have to accept them like they said, or I was going to reject them. And the consequences of rejecting Christ is eternal separation. The Bible tells us that we won't get to heaven. And so the very next day, I was so convicted, I took a walk out in the back of our property all by myself, and I sat down at the base of a big tree, and I simply prayed. And I said, Lord, I messed my life up, and I'm sorry for that. And I said, I want you now to come in and change me. Be my Lord and Savior. And that's basically all I remember I said. But that very moment I prayed that, God came in, and I felt His forgiveness. And I just felt like a hammer was lifted off my back. And I knew God was real that very moment because I knew my sin was gone. The Bible tells us that when we confess our sin to Him, that He is faithful and just to forgive us our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And I felt that. I knew that I had been cleansed. And I went back after doing that, and I told my wife what I had done. And she told me that she had done exactly the same thing 6 months before that, and she was afraid to tell me. And so here she was. She had been a Christian for 6 months. She was afraid to tell me, but she was praying for me the whole time I was in Timmins. So there was a lot of things that were going on in the back, people were praying for me all over the place when I went to Timmins. So that really changed my life. My wife and I, she was able to forgive me for the things that I had done. My wife and I fell in love all over again. You know, God forgives us, and my wife forgave me much like He does. The Bible says that when we have confessed our sin to Him, that He forgives us, and then He forgets it. He'll never hold it against us again. And that's the way she forgave me. And we have had a wonderful life together since. I got on the phone after I became a Christian. I phoned Ron Ellis. And I said, Ron, I just committed my life to Christ. But I said, don't tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to know. I wanted to kind of quietly get out there. But within a year, I was in full-time ministry because God had other things in store for me. And we ended up going, my wife and I and our kids, 2 boys now I've had, and we moved to Teen Ranch. We left our dream home that we said we'd never move from. We moved to Teen Ranch, lived in an old farmhouse on the property, but we're never happier. Didn't make hardly any money there, but we're the most happy that we'd ever been. And I got into some real good habits when I was there, habits of having a daily personal time with the Lord, reading my Bible. I just picked up this Bible that I got from Elise, and I devoured that thing. I read it daily. I wanted to know everything about it. I wanted to know what else I had to do. And God speaks to us through His Word. And we need to know it. And so I got into some real good teaching when I was at Teen Ranch, and I had a good time of growth during that time. And now we live in Parry Sound. My boys have graduated from a Christian college. They have married wonderful Christian women, and in turn they have blessed us with 8 grandkids. And life is good. And God has been very good and very faithful to us. So I thank Him for all He's done. And you know, now I'm retired now, but very involved in doing a lot of things in our church. I do a men's Bible study. I work with Hockey Ministries International. Now, Hockey Ministries International, I know some of you are very familiar with, but those of you that aren't, they very quietly go about setting up chapels all over the place. In every hockey league, from the NHL, I think the NHL now has 27 teams that have chapels. The American Hockey League, the OHL, any major junior leagues, Hockey Ministries tries to place people that live in these cities to be chapel leaders. And I am the chapel leader for the junior team in Parry Sound. And I have the privilege of meeting with those guys on a weekly basis right at the arena, right after practice. And I get to share with them not only my story, but talk to them about their future. A lot of guys are just the same as I was, all excited about moving away from home, you know, and living their dream, playing hockey. But I talk to them about standards. I talk to them about their future. What do they want to get out of hockey? What do they want to do 5 years, 10 years down the road? Do you want to be a good father? Do you want to be a good husband? You know, do you want to be a leader in your community? And you want to be a man of integrity and good character. And you know what? They all want to be that. And if I was to ask all you guys here, you would probably say the same thing. But life gets in the way a lot of times, and we don't fulfill what we really want to do. And our life standards, a lot of times the standards that we grow up with, we have to relearn. If you grew up in an alcoholic family, then maybe your standard is alcohol is okay, and maybe that's taking you down a bad road. Some guys have standards of, you know, maybe smoking a little marijuana is all right, but I'd never stick a needle in my arm, and that's the standard that you might have. Everybody has standards. Criminals have standards. But when you come to learn about God's standard, which is His Bible, life goes so much better. You have to adopt His standards and maybe put aside some of the standards that we've grown up with and what we've lived by. And so I get the privilege of just talking to these guys at chapel about what they want to do and how they're going to accomplish that and what their standards are. And hopefully, them, like myself, will have the opportunity to change some of their standards and accept Christ's standards for our life. And it always goes so much better when we do it His way. We can rationalize things all we want to, but God's ways are the only ways to live a good life for Him. And so that's what I want to press upon their lives. That's what I hope that you guys will think about here today, about the standards that you have, the legacy that you will leave. What are people going to say about you at your funeral or after you die? And if those standards that you have had or the life that you lived isn't what you want it to be, there's still time. God's still giving you time. You can change even today. My standards, I came to Christ when I was 34 years old. And my standards have changed drastically since then. And they can do exactly the same for you. Anytime you want to start and leave a different legacy, you can start today. So that's what God's done in my life. I remember when I became a Christian, one of the old hockey players that I used to go drinking with, he said, Davey, you're going through a stage. This is a religious stage you're going through. He said, we'll get you back. And that was 31 years ago. And there's no way that I would give up what I have now for that life in the NHL with all that fame that goes along with it for what I have now. God's ways are the only way to give you an inner peace. That the peace that the Bible talks about is going beyond all understanding. I can't explain it to you. The wonderful peace that God gives you. And it's free for all of us if we'll just do it His way. So thank you for having me. I'd like to open up for some questions. If you guys have any questions about anything I've said, or maybe even hockey questions, we'll let that go for a bit, and then I can sign some pictures if you want some pictures here. So we got anything that anybody wanted to ask me about? Sometimes I don't explain myself real well, so yes.
How many years were you in the NHL?
I played 10 years in the NHL, from 71 till 81. Most of my time, 8 years in Pittsburgh, and just over 2 with the Leafs. So that's the way that one is.
Did Tim Horton, did he play his full NHL career with Pittsburgh?
No, no, because if the players sense that the coach doesn't really want that, he's not really behind it, they won't come. You'll get very few guys out. It's a volunteer thing. I've had some years where, you only get 2 or 3 guys. Sometimes you'll get 6 or 8. It varies dramatically. But if you've got a coach that is really sympathetic to Christian things, maybe he's not a Christian, but at least he's sympathetic to it, then he'll tell the guys, remember there's chapel tonight after practice, and he'll kind of promote it, which helps. But if not, it's kind of a tough go. But there's, good inroads being built in a lot of teams where they've been there for a lot of years. They see the benefits of having a chapel. A lot of times, grandparents die while the kids are away playing, and it brings up questions about eternity, and then you got a chapel leader that's there to help those guys go through tough times, and so that teams are seeing the benefits of having chapels now. And I talk to those guys about not only integrity and good character, but the Bible has a lot to say about good work ethic. And I talk to them about that. If you're going to be a Christian, you gotta work harder than everybody else out there. You want to let your light shine, whether you're on the ice or off the ice. And so being a Christian has got nothing to do with being a guy that doesn't fight, or fighting really is part of the game. I remember when I was in Toronto, Laurie Boschman, he became a Christian the very first chapel that we ever had in Toronto. Like that first chapel I went to because Ron invited me, Ron Ellis, and Laurie Boschman that very night, he became a Christian. And he got traded away from Toronto because of his faith, because Harold Ballard didn't think that he would be a tough guy anymore. He thought that he'd be kind of a wimpy guy, and his career was over. But Laurie Boschman went on to have a great career in Winnipeg, and then he went on and he was a captain of the Ottawa Senators, and he had a great career, and he didn't change at all. He was still a tough nut on the ice, and God gave him the abilities he had, and he used them. So, yeah.
Dave, in the Army world, we usually shut down our events in June. But being in the Kingston Corps, we reserve June in case of a parade in Toronto. Is that going to happen very soon?
Keep up the good work. People are so hungry for it in Toronto. I tell you what, when it comes, and I think they're on a great road of recovery now, because the changes are starting at the top, and they've got some really good, knowledgeable people, and the players they have right now maybe aren't a team to get it done right now, but they will get there. And I truly believe that. So I'm excited about the future for Toronto. More so than I have been for a lot of years. Yes?
Who heads up the Hockey Ministries International? Is there something we should be praying for?
Well, yes, we'd love for you to pray. I'm not on staff of Hockey Ministries, and I'm just a volunteer chapel leader. But the chapels are just starting to gear up now, all over the place. So if you could pray for that, that would be wonderful. That it would be well received by, like I mentioned, coaches and management, and that the guys will come. And we have a chapel meeting in Toronto at the end of October, and that's where the chapel leaders all get together, and we discuss ways that we can help and share ideas of what we're doing to try to get things better. To get chapels started in more places and everything. So if you could keep all those things in prayer, that would be wonderful. A guy by the name of Don Lismer Started Hockey Ministries International. He lives in Montreal. But the Ontario director is a good friend of mine. Paul Allen is his name, and he is the Ontario director. So he's in charge of everything here, and he works closely with Mark Osborne, who was, he spoke here last year, I think. And Laurie Boschman was on HMI staff too. He does a chapel in Ottawa. So yes, we would love your prayers about Hockey Ministry. Just very quietly goes, does their thing. They're not. You won't see them in newspapers or advertising, but they do a wonderful work. And when you do a chapel, there's not a lot you can tell people about it. Because when you're talking to NHL players that come to chapel, you don't want to go tell anybody else what you talk about. Because if that gets out, your chapel will be over. Because if the players think that you're telling somebody else about something that they shared in chapel, when they're opening up to you about things, your chapel's over. So very quietly go about spreading the gospel, and you don't tell other people about it. It's just between those guys and you as a chapel leader and God. He's the one that does all the work. Yes?
How did the parents cope with you talking to the kids? I know a lot of kids are coming from broken homes. How did the parents receive that?
You get a mixed reaction, I think, there too.
Yeah.
You can imagine that if you're a Christian parent and you have a Christian player, you're loving chapel. Because maybe your boy's away for the first time, and you're happy that there's a chapel leader there that'll, help him stay on the straight and narrow type of thing. But if you come from a family that doesn't know anything about God or could care less, then there's just a different reaction there altogether too. So hopefully that you can get one or two players that will influence one or two others that come, and they'll be just seekers. They'll just be kind of wondering what it is, and there might be a little interest there. And like I say, God does all the work, so we'll just hopefully grow from there. Yes?
How long was Gressman in the NHL, and where's he working now?
I don't know Dave's statistics. I know Dave, but I don't know him well enough to even tell you that. I'm sorry about that. I haven't seen Dave in a lot of years now. Yes?
As a defenseman, who would you most fear coming down the ice towards you from an opposing team during your career?
A guy by the name of Gilbert Burrows. He was the one guy that I think he had the best dekes. Some guys will beat you with speed, but Gilbert Burrows, I think, had the best dekes as a player. So he was one of the guys that I really watched when he came down on me.
Did he play for Buffalo?
He played for Buffalo, yeah. And then French connection, Gilbert Burrows, Rick Martin, and Rennie Robert. Great line. Yes, in the back.
What's your greatest memory of the NHL?
My greatest memory, wow, there's so many. I remember I scored my first goal against Ken Dryden. That was a good memory. Making my first All-Star team, being picked to be on Team Canada 76, great thrill, great honor. I didn't play in the series. I was there, I believe, because it was questionable whether Bobby Orr could play because his knees weren't good. And so I did a lot of sitting. And fortunately for the country, Bobby Orr was able to play, and he went on to be the most valuable player. So I got very little playing time. But it was still a great thrill to be at least picked with that group of men and be even associated with them. That was a great hockey team. Yes?
What was it like playing with Tim Horton? What was your impression?
Well, Tim is the guy that I grew up and I kind of idolized him. Like there was Tim Horton on the fence, and there was Carl Brewer, Alan Stanley. They had a good defense, but Tim was not a very big man, but he was built like a fire hydrant. He was a tremendously strong guy, and how to say this? Tim had a life off the ice that was very rocky. He had a problem with alcohol. I'm not telling stories out of school here. Him and his wife had a very tumultuous relationship. So a lot of things, like with myself, things on the ice for Tim went good, but things at home didn't go real good. And very tragically, the way he ended up, being killed in a car accident. But Tim was, like I say, as a hockey player, he was a very strong guy, great player, played a lot of years. But he had problems like I did off the ice. Yeah. Yes?
So are we starting to see a change in the culture at NHL? Guys like Chris Neal, Mike Fisher, James Turner about their faith. Are we finally starting to see a change of acceptance, a change of inclusion of our faith?
Absolutely. It's happening, I would say, rapidly now. And like I say, a lot of the reasons for that is that of the chapels that are going on. Guys are coming to realize that being a Christian can help you be a better player. And it was always thought, mistakenly before, that if you became a Christian, that you couldn't be that tough guy or that same player, that for some reason you're given the tag as being a wimp. Basically, that's the way it was. But now that the organizations see the good that it does, where guys can learn about being better husbands and fathers, and learn about being men of good character, men of integrity, the off-ice things they do are better. And the more Christian examples you get of that, of players, then the more it's accepted. And so when I played, there was very few Christians in the league. But now there's a lot more, and it's getting to be more like football and baseball, where there's just a lot more Christians, and guys are giving God the glory when they hit a home run or make a touchdown or whatever, and so it is changing in hockey. Hockey is